Welcome back, Raiders and Runners. I now have 50 hours in the Arc Raiders Technical Test 2, which was only over like 4 days. And I have 30 hours in the Marathon Alpha test. And I wanted to talk about the difference between the two games. They are both what I would call entry-level extraction shooters. Something like Escape from Tarkov, which I've played for many years. I think most people agree is a hardcore extraction experience. You know, no hit markers, you load every single bullet into the magazine, a bazillion modifications for weapons, systems that require a lot of discovery by the player, and very little hand-holding, and a difficult game. Both Marathon and Arc Raiders, I think, are in the same category of entry-level extraction shooters, i.e. you get a map. Your teammates have HUD above them. There's no friendly fire. You're not going to accidentally destroy your teammate. The mod system is a lot more simple than something like Tarkov, right? So they're in the same category there. Arc Raiders is third person, Marathon is first person. There's been an overwhelming positive response to Arc Raiders by a lot of people, including a lot of people from the Escape from Tarkov community, which would be in the kind of hardcore category. And Arc Raiders is not even a first-person shooter, and people are loving it. And I think it would be generous to say the response to Marathon has been mixed. Because of that, people have been saying, Marathon's cooked, Bungie's cooked, this is going south. I am of the opposite opinion. I think Arc Raiders just gave Marathon their blueprint, their to-do list for what needs to happen before release. The question is, can they put into place some of these things within 5 months? Or are these things already in the oven because this was an alpha and maybe some of that stuff is already happening in the background? But if Marathon releases in the state that it is in the alpha, I think it will decline quickly. I think we already saw that in the alpha test. People left, and the thing is with extraction shooters or any PvP game, as soon as you get a decline in the population, it goes south very quick. We're going to talk about why people were looking at gameplay of Marathon and saying this is boring, and people were looking at gameplay of Arc and saying this looks so fun. I have numerous comments from people saying this looks like a good experience, and I don't even play extraction shooters, and then quite the opposite for Marathon. I think there are a bunch of areas that are really, really easy to talk about that Arc does incredibly well that I think Marathon needs to do to be successful. Let's talk about it. Okay, let's start my first major point. I'll have some B-roll playing. I do recommend, though, that you watch one of my other videos with a full run. It's very, very hard to like get the sense of an extraction shooter by just watching like snippets of gameplay. You kind of need to hear the sound, you need to hear the comms, you need to hear my interaction with players. I'll leave a link down below. I've got so many great games in Arc, so you can watch the full run if you haven't seen it already. But I'll put some stuff in the background and try and match it as best I can. Whatever. First thing I want to talk about is tension and atmosphere. And there are multiple components that create tension and atmosphere. Arc has fantastic tension and atmosphere. It's fantastic to play. It's fantastic to watch. Marathon was lacking in this case. And why is that? I think one of the main components is the map and the map design combined with enemies. I'm going to talk separately about enemies as well, but they kind of need to be in here. And the reason for that is in Arc, you have these patrolling drones. You have this heightened threat outside of buildings. When you're scurrying around on the outside, there are like sentinel snipers that lock on to you from a mile away. There are these little drones that follow you. There are different types of drones with different threat levels. You really feel like you're a rat scurrying around outside, which is thematically correct because you are a raider and you live underground. The surface has been taken over by robots, and that theme comes through really strong. And what it does, the way the maps are designed and the use of enemies, it makes you feel like you are threatened all the time when you are outside. And so what happens is it has this fantastic flow to the map where you run to the safety of a building, and of course there could be players inside. And there are some other robots that lurk inside too, called ticks, that will jump on you and start attacking you. Regardless, you feel this constant bubbling tension when you're playing Arc. There are also reasons to be outside. There are, once again, thematically, there are these big robot carcasses, these big hulls that have rusted over the years that you can loot, and they have good loot, but you are vulnerable while you're doing it. And you're constantly thinking, I hope someone doesn't take my head off right now, but I kind of want this loot. So there's reasons to be outside. There's loot to be outside. But most importantly, there is great tension and atmosphere when you are outside. And that tension and atmosphere doesn't go away when you go indoors, because then you have the threat of players who are also seeking shelter. Now, Marathon, I don't think gives you that tension and atmosphere outside. In fact, I think the outside environments are probably the weakest component of Marathon right now, and hopefully will have some of the most work put into them. There's not much reason to be outside in Marathon. There's not a huge amount of good loot outside that you want to be moving around maps. The outside areas is really just an in-between before you get to another building to enter. And the outside areas, in my opinion, don't really have threat from enemy AI. The outside areas are mostly threatenable by other players seeing you cross an area. And I think that's a part of the game they can improve in Marathon, is doing something to increase that constant tension when you're playing the game in outside areas. Cool. When we get to the inside areas and building design, Ark is fantastic. They are very, very memorable areas that feel like mini PvP maps. There are angles, there are entry points, there are exit points, there are opportunities to flank, sometimes without any tools and sometimes with tools. You can unlock zip lines and grapple hooks, which are kind of like mid and end game tools, which give you crazy plays to like flank players. But when I was playing Ark, we would enter an area and it's got this nice flow to it. And I'd be like, all right, comms. We're going to probably encounter players here. Right, and you start checking corners, you start checking the corridor, you go, I'm going to open this door now, expect a player to be here. There's also like a noise component. You're listening for players looting. You have like entry security cameras that start buzzing, which will let anyone know inside that you're approaching and potentially give you away. You can take them out with silenced weapons if you want to be sneaky. But overall, I think PvP map design is hard and it's hard to describe. But I think everyone knows, especially if you play D2, there are some good PvP maps and there are some bad PvP maps. And they have this ebb and flow to them where the game feels good. Ark just has that in its indoor buildings. There are very memorable sections that feel like a PvP map that have good callouts, good angles, and high tension. Marathon, I feel, is kind of missing that. In Marathon, I kind of just feel like, hey, I'm just going to send it. We're going to hope for the best and hope nobody's inside. I can't really remember the layout of the building. Most of them are just kind of square with the entry exit point in every corner. And that's about it. There's obviously some elevation to a lot of the buildings in Marathon when you got ladders and find staircases and stuff like that. But I struggle to really define why the buildings in Marathon, the indoor spaces, weren't that fun for PvP or even versing AI versus Ark, which felt like I was playing a really good PvP map in third-person perspective. It could be that the Marathon maps are maybe too small, the buildings are too small and everything's quite clustered together, whereas you get these massive complexes in Ark with, sometimes you're like on top of like a skyscraper and you can take zip lines at the top, or you're just in these really large buildings that gives a lot of room to maneuver and to kind of play around. And also you have these hot spots where the loot is. Ark, it becomes really obvious where these hot spots are and where these good loot areas are and where you're going to get player interaction. I never really felt that in Marathon, like, hey, we want to go to this building and this locker and we are going to expect PvP there, right? The indoor environments in Marathon, I think, look really good and could have a lot of tension and great flow to them, but it is missing something. I don't know what that is, but I'm just, after playing it for 30 hours, I'm playing Ark rated to 50 hours, my encounters in Marathon are nowhere near as good as Ark is. Ark always felt like a good engagement. Marathon didn't in those indoor areas. the final kind of topic about maps, I would just talk about the general size of the map. The Ark maps are much larger, even though when you pull out your map, it kind of looks about the same, but when you actually start running, they are much larger maps than Marathon. And in the majority of the case in Ark, you could hear gunfire and you could hear conflict, but you probably couldn't get there in time. So you would hear like a robot shooting a machine gun, or you would see players fighting. Sometimes you would just see them. Or when players go down in Ark, they shoot off a flare. So you would see a flare, but you probably couldn't get there in time to catch them with their pants down, to third party them, to hit them when they're still healing and reloading. In Marathon, I felt like you could pretty much third party anyone. You just be sneaky, wait. As soon as you hear gunshots, you just beeline it there and you can catch people out. And I found towards the end of the playtest, the meta was don't shoot any AI, wait for gunshots, third party. And then like the third party was getting third party by third party who was getting third partied. And I do think that was an issue with the size of the Marathon maps. And I did not find that issue really with Ark. You really only got third partied in Ark when a team was already close, right? You accidentally set off a robot and a team was close, then you're going to get third party. But it wasn't people on the other side of the map, you know, beelining it to you. And part of that is the map design. There's a lot of elevation in Ark. Sometimes you just can't get there far enough. A part of it is to do with enemies. There are enemies that you just can't kill. You can't take on. You can't get there in time to third party them. And I think that's actually like really important. And on the scale of like PvP-ness, in Ark, I got into heaps of conflict, but it wasn't always third partying. In Marathon, I got into conflict, but it was almost always a third party. Like I heard gunshots first and I raced towards them and I got the advantage by third partying them. I didn't just kind of stumble across each other. I also think Marathon is much closer to a battle royale than it is an extraction shooter. And it's much closer to being PvP orientated than PvE orientated. I think the balance in Ark is actually much better with how many robots you fight, how many players you fight. Overall, Ark does a really good job at building tension and atmosphere through their map design, through this constant bubbling away of like anxiety, being outside in earshot of robots. Some of them you can take out, some of them you can't take out. The indoor sections have a mini PvP map feel with good callouts, good choke points, plenty of like maneuverability and outplay options with gadgets and tools. And in general, the map is large enough that it limits some of the third party PvP-ness, because I actually think that's what's going to annoy people the most, is if you can always just hear gunshots and you can race there and third party people, it encourages what happened to me in the Marathon, which was just like, don't shoot anything until we hear someone else shoot, and then we'll get the jump on them. Okay, my next topic, enemies. Now, I've kind of covered this a little bit with like the map flow and design because they go hand in hand, but I got more to say about it. In Ark Raiders, the enemies have a varied threat level. There are certain enemies that you can take out with any gun. The Wasp is just a little drone that shoots like a machine gun, and doesn't matter what weapon you're using, if it uses light ammo, medium ammo, or heavy ammo, you can take it out. However, with the drones, there goes up to like a Rocketeer that has like armor plating on it on the front, and if it's facing you and you only have light ammo, you are probably dead. And so most of the time you're going to be running away seeking cover in a building, this is why I'm saying there's this tension outside, and you seek cover, then you stumble into player, then you're dead. Either way, there is this variation in threat level with the enemies, and it goes higher and higher and higher. Eventually you get to Bastions and Bisons, which are these like roaming huge robots that will mess your day up unless you come fully prepared. You can kill them. You need to probably craft endgame grenades and other weapons, or like what I did, I used proximity chat to recruit other players to help me kill stuff. Very, very fun. And there's even like a boss level robot that has certain weak points that open when they do certain move sets. Like this little thing comes out of the top of the queen when it fires a laser beam. So you have to bait out an attack to shoot its weak spot, or you have to have high enough penetration on your ammo to shoot other parts of the robot. Now, if I didn't tell you I was talking about Arc Raiders, you'd probably think I'm talking about a Bungie game, because this is very Destiny 2. Enemy design. We've got weak spots. We've got giant creatures and robots, teamwork to take these things down, and some sort of strategy. This is what is missing from Marathon. I don't feel like there is much strategy to taking out the current enemies in Marathon. Doesn't matter what weapon you really have, you can basically deal with all the enemies. You have the UESC, the United Earth Space Council, I think, which are just humanoid robots. And they all kind of die by shooting them in the face. And unless you've got a shotgun and you're out of range, you can deal with them with your team. There are varied threat levels in Marathon, like you get ones with shields, and you get the Ghost UESC, which I think is probably the most interesting enemy type. It goes invisible, but you still deal with them all the same way. And I think more importantly, there is nothing on the Marathon map that you have to run away from. That is actually, I think, important for a flow of a map and to build tension. Is like, I can't deal with this right away. In Marathon, you can deal with every enemy from game one. In Arc, you cannot deal with every enemy from game one. You have to build up towards those pinnacle enemies to deal with them. And you might even have to recruit other players to help you do it. I think Marathon is missing pinnacle enemies, variants in enemy type. I don't think they've got enough enemy types in the game. They've got the UESC, and they got ticks, which is like aliens that come and jump at you. I don't think it's enough. And the thing is, I think Bungie's best thing in Destiny 2 is how distinct their enemy factions are. They invented, maybe not invented, they popularized spider tanks. Why am I shooting a spider tank in Arc Raiders and not in Marathon? Why am I taking out the weak points of a spider tank by shooting its joints in Arc Raiders and not in Marathon? So I really do hope on their end game that they're talking about in Marathon with the map Marathon, which is a giant spaceship. They have confirmed they're going to get the SVIT, the compilers, which maybe that will be the pinnacle enemy. But I actually think the earlier maps need it too. I think the earlier maps need more enemy variation and just tough stuff that makes you want to run away until you've leveled up. This will also solve some of the map issues I was talking about before, because you put in these big enemies and it stops players' movement. All of a sudden, unless you're geared, you can't go through this way. You've got to go around. You've got to take the long scenic route. But then again, the maps are probably too small for that right now as well. Oh boy. Overall, Bungie knows how to do this. You know, in Destiny, we have enemy shield types you need to match to your weapon. You have weak points, you have strategies, you have all this kind of stuff that you have to do to deal with enemies. And I don't see any of that in Marathon. Right now, it's like shoot in the face with whatever you've got and you'll solve that problem. I think they need to bump up enemy variation, which will be huge, like a big task. And then give players, you know, start asking players to do different things to destroy those enemies. All right, let's move on to events and secrets. Arc has this event system that goes through like a rotation, very similar to like a Destiny 2 public event thing, where when you look at a map, it may have an event running. And these are really, really good. They either completely change the ebb and flow of the map, or they reinforce hotspots. So for example, there was one where, I can't remember exactly what it's called and I can't see it now, but it's something like hidden loot caches. And it says something like, oh, you know, raiders and who have gone to the surface have hidden their best loot, but they've timed it to blow up. And that's all it says. And then when you go in, it is incredibly subtle, and I wouldn't have even heard it unless I had a friend that told me about it. He's like, hey, listen to this. I was like, what? I'm not hearing anything. I'm hearing birds. I'm hearing like gunfire. He's like, no, just listen. I was like, oh, there's a ticking sound. He's like, yeah, follow the ticking sound. We follow the ticking sound and there is a buried loot box. We dig it up and it has some good loot in it. And it is everywhere. And what they've done is they've scattered it around the outskirt of the map. And usually the outskirts of the map doesn't have very good loot. So all of a sudden now, when this event is on, the hotspots, and I think people hadn't worked it out yet because people weren't doing it. We were cleaning up. But when the game goes live, I can guarantee, rather than the center buildings, which is usually like the loot hotspots, when this event is running, now all the combat and all the players are going to be running through the bushes looking for these hidden loot boxes. And it completely changes the flow of the map and your objective for going into that map. Like, okay, I'm going to farm these. The loot inside was incredibly good. Like, I'll talk about it a little bit later, but Arc Raider has like a crafting recipe. Sometimes it's basically like end game gear and almost like exotic level crafting. So very rewarding to like grab these loot boxes and to have a look at them. But changes the flow of the map, changes where players go, and gives players a different reason to go to the map and have a different objective. Another example would be reinforcing the way the map already plays. There is one map called Spaceport, and essentially in the center there's a giant tower. And you got to cross this open field to get there. Very fun, very epic, filled with robots to get there. And there is an event that makes the loot even better at the top. So you have players, very sweaty players, rushing this one building to get to the top of the tower and to get the loot. It reinforces the flow of the map. Other thing is the Harvester and the Queen event. There is a boss level queen that has weak spots that you can kill, that has mechanics, and she's guarding a loot area that has a multi-stage puzzle to solve. I made a separate video about this. I'll link it down below if you want to watch it. It is absolutely epic. You have to get in there. You have to press these buttons. You have to insert canisters. You have to shoot buttons around the outside. It is on the level. I mean, by Destiny standards, it's a simple puzzle. But when you put a simple puzzle into an extraction shooter surrounded by a boss that you probably can't kill and other players are going to try kill you, it's more than enough. And once again, this is what I expected Marathon to have. A boss in an area guarding loot that requires some sort of puzzle to solve. And once again, these are on events. These only have 2 hours to do it. So when this was up, I'm like, go, 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 go. We've got to try get this loot as quick. We've got to try farm this. It felt like I was doing strike missions and trying to farm it. We were pushing this point to try get the best loot and solve this puzzle and get out while everyone else is trying to kill us. Did Marathon have that level of events and secrets? They have these little public events that are running, but I don't think they weren't as enjoyable or as complex or as epic as I think they probably should be, or maybe even as rewarding. And once again, like, I feel like that's Bungie's wheelhouse, like cooperative activities, public events. Like, this is something they should be very, very good at and can put into an extraction shooter to be their point of difference. But here we are with Arc doing it better. Not to mention, there are also nighttime raids in Arc, which are on like a rotation timer system too, which basically doubles the loot or increases the rarity of loot. So now you have all the tension and atmosphere of the map with patrolling bots, but it's dark. You got to use your flashlight, or you try to go like stealthy as you go through the map. Very, very atmospheric, high level tension, but another cool way to change the gameplay on a map by making it dark, by making it nighttime. And it plays differently because you get teams that are sweaty as hell running nighttime raids to farm loot. Right, let's move on to a super important feature: proximity chat and matchmaking, specifically solo queues. Arc Raiders has proximity chat between enemy players. You can talk to other enemy players. There is also a solo queue that prioritizes other solo players. I would say out of 50 hours from the time that I went solo, I probably got like 90% of my games with other solo players. Occasionally, I would get teams. I mean, there's no way to actually confirm that they were on a match team. They could have just found each other in-game and teamed up, but it definitely felt like they had a Discord and they were talking to each other. So it's not impossible to get matched with teams, but the solo queue was actually really good. And here's the crazy thing. Solo queue was easier than being in a squad. And I'll tell you why. I did an experiment. I told everyone to not shoot me. I went in solo. I played a total of 11 games. So that's not a huge sample size, but just remember that every game goes for like 30 minutes. So it's a decent amount of play time. And this was the only time that I recorded it. Everything else was like, whatever. I wasn't writing any numbers down. Out of those 11 games, I had 13 player interactions. So some games had multiple player engagements. Of those ones, 9 player engagements, I said, don't shoot, leave me alone. They either talked back to me, they nodded, they emoted, and they went on their way. This was my biggest weapon. I could literally just go, please don't kill me. I'm doing my bounties, I'm questing, and people just left me alone. Or they teamed up with me. One time, a player just disengaged. So I knew they were there. I was like, hello, is anyone there? And I saw them run off. Just one time. There were only 3 times where I said, please don't shoot me, and a player shot me. And of 2 of those times, I had already made a friend. So there were 2 matches where I said, please don't shoot me. And I said, yep, no problem. I'm not going to shoot you. And then I came across another person. And I said, please don't shoot me. And they shot me. That happened only twice. So really, there was only 1 engagement out of how many hours, out of 11 games, where I said, please don't shoot me. And they shot me. That is the power of proximity chat. And ironically, I had 0 toxicity. I had no one swearing at me, no one calling me names. And ironically, I had that in Marathon with my own teammates. Saying, why did you do that? That was a bad play. Can't believe you did that. I had more friendly engagements with enemy players in Arc Raiders than I had with my own teammates in Marathon. Proximity chat, I think, is a core feature of extraction shooters, and Bungie really needs to add it. They need to do whatever they need to do to make themselves feel comfortable with having it in the game. From my point of view, if you're playing a PvP game and you have random matchmaking on it and you have matchmaking for your teams, there's no guarantee your team's not going to be toxic. You just need to have the report features in there so you can report them if they are toxic and they can be acted upon. And you just need to have the option to opt out. That's it. I think Bungie really, really needs to think about adding proximity chat into the game. The thing is, you also need to give players a reason to work together. So proximity chat doesn't work without solo queue. I'll tell you what happens. When I went into Arc Raiders with a team and I said, don't shoot me, when I was in a team lobby, it was almost 100% shoot on sight. When you're working in duos and trios, nobody wants to be your friend. They have got their combat unit and there's no extra room, right? And you are taking up their loots. Nearly every single player engagement in a team, people shot on sight. Okay, so there's no point adding proximity chat unless you add the solo queue. They go hand in hand for them to really work together. The other thing is you need mechanics where you can actually get people up of enemy teammates. I on multiple occasions shot someone, downed them, then used the defib on them going, listen, are you friendly now? Are you willing to behave now? I'm going to get you up and we can work together, or you can go on your merry way. Very funny engagements doing that too. So a way to get enemy players back up was also really cool in Arc Raiders. And it goes hand in hand with the enemies. When you put a massive threat on the map, like the Queen, players will start working together. And they need proximity chat to do that. I actually recruited players to try kill the Queen in the very last match of the tech test. I put on the microphone and I started screaming at people, we're going to kill the Queen. We're going to kill the Queen. And people just joined us. Really cool moment. I'm going to upload that as a separate video. It is so hilarious. There ended up being like a Hungarian streamer. They're like, what the hell is this guy doing? And ended up joining with us. It was awesome. Anyway, proximity chat by itself is not necessarily good. You need the solo queues, solo priority matchmaking, and even duo priority matchmaking if possible. And you need to take some of the recommendations I made from enemies. You need those high priority end game bosses that encourages players to work together. Finally, let's talk about the complete product. Arc Raiders right now feels like a finished product. And both Marathon and Arc Raiders, I think, are kind of on the same timeline for release. Arc Raiders, I don't believe, is given a release date, but I think it's expected this year as well. So these two games that are very close to release. We don't really know how much progress has been on Marathon, and what kind of build we played and how much has already been done while we played this build. But Arc Raiders, as of right now, is a complete product, and there is even more things on top that it adds that Marathon doesn't have. Firstly, there is like a workshop and a hideout. So yes, you have like vendors like Marathon, which you do quests for, but you have your own personal hideout that you level up, and you build a weapons bench, a utility bench. Think pretty much like a survival game. You know how you build like survival games, like, oh, get an advanced workbench. It's exactly like that. And when you do that, it allows you to build other stuff. So there's a very heavy crafting aspect to Arc, which encourages you to make sure you're always looking for parts and materials when you're out and about. It also gives you a goal for like some sort of meta progression. So the game gets easier for you to get hold of mid-game and end-game gear because you can now craft it rather than buying it. And sometimes you don't have access to buy it. You have to craft it. Talking about crafting, they have these crafting recipes, which are incredibly exciting to find. It, for me, was kind of like finding an exotic. Like, I stole a crafting recipe off a player, and it was the very first scoped sniper rifle I had found. And I was probably, 20 hours into the game and had not seen a scoped weapon. And it completely changed how I approached the game, how I approached maps, and the power I had in the game to then now craft a sniper rifle in a map. And of course, I needed to have the right workbench, like a level 2 workbench. I needed to have the right materials to craft it, but felt really good. Similarly, I got a crafting recipe from the Queen, from the Harvester, which is kind of like end-game crafting recipe that was once again a crazy-looking sniper rifle, looked like Sleeper Simulant. So they have these recipes that you can collect just by looting and doing objectives, and they're really, really powerful. There is a mod system that I haven't even seen personally, and someone messaged me on Discord saying, I found this, have a look. And it kind of is like adding an exotic perk to weapons. So there's this gun called, it looks like a hand cannon. In fact, it's called a hand cannon, the Anvil. And it's a single shot hand cannon, right? It shoots heavy rounds. There's a mod you can put on it that makes it shoot 4 bullets at once. The bullets now have, I think, a 40% damage reduction, but makes it almost like a shotgun. Like, what the hell? That completely modifies the gun itself. And I know, I do think Marathon is going to have that. They have spoken about that, but I don't know if we've seen it yet. So that's probably pretty comparable. Arc has the Battle Pass system for everyone to see, the cosmetics for everyone to see, and it looks pretty fair. I don't know if they've confirmed it, but it looks very, very similar to the Helldivers system. If you've ever played Helldivers, essentially, there's a fee to play the game. I think Helldivers was like $40, and I think it's pretty much rumored that Arc will be, a $40 game. And then there's battle passes that you buy on top of that. However, just like Helldivers, you can get the currency to buy the battle pass in the game. So there are challenges in the game that you can do that will give you that currency. And by leveling up, you also get that currency. And then just like Helldivers, in the battle pass, I think it costs like 500 Raider tokens to unlock the battle pass. If you complete your battle pass, you get Raider tokens back too. So it costs you 500, but you actually get 300 Raider tokens back, right? So I'm assuming if you don't want to spend money on the battle pass and you play the game a lot, you're going to be able to unlock a lot of things without spending real money, which is very, very nice. Including the cosmetics. The way that you access the cosmetics is you just do challenges as you play the game. You have like a list of challenges. They give you this cosmetic coins, and you use those coins in your battle pass to purchase them. The game also adds what's called masteries, which is a really, really fun mechanic. it requires you to do these mini challenges in a match, in a single match. For example, one of the challenges was to loot husks of robots, and you had to loot 15, which is actually pretty difficult. But if you do it, it's going to give you the crafting recipe for a grapple hook, a literal grapple hook that will change how you play the game. And it also gives you a grapple hook after you do 10 of them. So you've got to get these 15 things, and then you have to extract to complete the challenge. They're called masteries. Very, very clever. Very, very engaging. High tension. I was pooping my pants once I found 15, because I knew if I got out, I was going to get a grapple hook, and that was going to change how I played the game. The game also has a skill tree for meta progression. So every time you level up, you get a skill point, and you can pop it into a different aspect of your skill tree. There's nothing too crazy about the skill tree, but it does make a huge difference. For example, I spec'd into stamina. I could just carry more weight, I could carry more loot, and I could outrun all my friends because I was at a higher level. So very impactful, nothing crazy, right? You're not going to be like gaining Destiny Guardian abilities or anything. You're just going to be like increasing your stamina, how much you can hold, how quickly you loot, how quickly you vault, the damage you do to certain enemy types, things like that. Overall, Ark feels like a complete product that could release tomorrow and would be received well. Marathon doesn't have these nice systems added on top yet either. Doesn't have a hideout. We haven't seen the battle pass system or the cosmetics. I mean, obviously that's going to be there, but we don't know how it's going to work. The masteries is very good. Marathon doesn't have a skill tree either, right? There's no skill tree in Marathon. So, yeah, there is some things lacking that are the nice twos, the additional cherries on top. Overall, I think it's undeniable that Ark Raiders outperformed Marathon. And what I think is a true testament to that is that both are clearly in the category of like entry-level extraction shooters. They take a lot of the pain points out of the hardcore extraction games like Escape from Tarkov, and they simplify it. What was incredible was that Ark Raiders appealed to that player, the Escape from Tarkov player. Big time streamers were playing it, they were tweeting about it, and a lot of them were saying, this is the first extraction shooter that I've liked after Escape from Tarkov. I'm having a great time. And not only that, it's a third-person perspective. And I don't even like third-person perspective. My personal opinion for the main difference in the reception of Ark Raiders and Marathon is that Ark Raiders has better outdoor areas in their maps, better indoor map design. They have greater variation in enemy types, giving you these pinnacle bosses that incite fear. They have proximity chat and a solo queue. They have better events that take place that change the flow of the map. And right now it is a complete product with skill trees, masteries, modding systems, crafting recipes. Bungie obviously has an incredible amount of work to do unless some of these systems are already in place. And unfortunately, I think if Marathon releases in its current state or anything close to what the alpha was, I think you will get a player drop-off, very similar to how we saw players drop off in the alpha. And I think that is the worst case for any PvP game, because then it snowballs, especially in an extraction shooter. If your AI enemies are not up to snuff and they're not that good, or they're not that varied and fun to engage with, and the players drop off, all of a sudden you have a game that's not very good to engage with. And that was kind of what was happening in the alpha. People were just commenting that it was a bit boring to watch. Oppositely, people were saying that Ark Raiders was incredibly exciting to watch. That's just my opinion. I hope someone from Bungie played Ark Raiders, and I hope they identified the things that they need to work on, because I think there is room for both. I think there is room for Marathon. I think there is room for Ark Raiders. One is first person, one is third person, but Ark Raiders is far ahead at the moment. And Bungie has a lot of stuff to do to catch up. And hopefully they've already caught up a little bit. There you go. That's my thoughts. Thank you for watching. If you'd like to support the channel, you can also leave a comment. You can leave the word Ark Raiders and Marathon. All right. As usual, it's been a pleasure. Bye-bye.